This is the meeting of the Palo Alto Unified School District Board of Trustees. The date is February 11th, and it is 6:32 PM. And the board met in closed session and took no reportable action. And the first thing on our agenda is agenda approval. Any changes to the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
I second.
Okay, any
Aye.
student board members?
Aye.
Board members?
Aye.
Are we short?
We are.
All right, well,
It's okay.
one absent. Yeah. All right, so proceeding on the agenda to item 2 reports. The first up is 2A Superintendent of Schools report. Dr. Austin.
All right, thank you. I have a few things tonight. First of all, Azusa Pacific University in Southern California runs an aspiring superintendents cohort for predominantly assistant superintendents, of course, looking to take that next step. I am connected with the group and was happy to have the opportunity to get our associate superintendent, Sharon Ofek, is now part of the group too, the only Northern California member. But the group was up here in Northern California last Thursday and Friday. They attended leadership training at Cisco Meraki in San Francisco. And then day 2, we were able to host, co-sponsored with, in fact, not co-sponsored, entirely sponsored by Stanford University. Best part about Stanford University is not only did they give us some of their top people to come in and work with the group, they sponsored the entire thing, and it was done through a phone call. They really carried the load and put our people in a great position. I can tell you that personally, having attended, this is probably one of the most powerful single professional development days I've been to, partly because of the eclectic group that was before us, and then next the pace and the energy in the room. Just very quickly, without going through the names of all the presenters, we had a lesson about the power of storytelling and how important it is to attach some context behind data and how that increases the memory and the experience for those who are on the other side. A fantastic lesson on communication in crisis, which we've applied even today, and something that I don't think necessarily raises to the level of crisis, but it did impact the way that we communicated today. A presentation on challenge success, something that this school district has been a long-time member of, and using powerful data as predictors. It's something we've talked a lot about here. We've struggled in some ways to narrow that down, so I'm going to give you one very concrete example. Stanford researchers have identified, and this isn't shocking, but it's very concrete, that 8th grade students with less than a 2.0 GPA or less than 87% positive daily attendance are at risk for failures at the high school level, including graduation rates and being able to matriculate to colleges. That's the kind of data that I think is so concrete and not tied to adjustments that the state can make, that these are the kinds of things I really want to build into the next iteration of the promise. So that was one of those things that's an instant takeaway. So thank you to Stanford University. I mean, they were beyond gracious and really made Palo Alto look great, the university and the entire cohort. Switching gears, Santa Clara County is having some meetings, again, related to Stanford University. The one piece that has a connection to us is Santa Clara County is now looking to move designated land for Palo Alto Unified for future school sites. That was not something that we had discussed with the county specifically before I got the announcement that they were moving forward with this. My only communication to the county was yesterday in a phone call where I think we will all agree we have no desire to be part of another fight with Stanford University. If it's a discussion, let's make it a discussion. Let's keep it civil and maybe a better starting point than what we had in part of the GUP process. Switching gears again, baccalaureate at Pali, there was some rumor out there that was tied to some truth for a little bit, that baccalaureate was in jeopardy due to the loss of the venue, the Flint Center in, I believe that's Cupertino. That was absolutely true, that they had been searching for a site, but just this week, a cancellation occurred in San Jose at the, somebody help me with the name of it,
The Performing Arts Center.
Performing Arts Center. And Mr. Paulson sent out something to his community today saying that they're in final negotiations for May 30th. It's a Saturday down at this facility, which from what I hear has more seating and a competitive price.
It's a beautiful facility.
I've heard that also. Couple last things. Thursday is a non-student day for site staff development, and principals have been submitting their agendas to Ed Services. Tomorrow, I'm pretty excited. I asked Jennifer Baker, our Director of Elementary Special Ed, to take me on a tour of our autism programs around the districts or rooms that are serving autistic students, and I'm really excited about that. It's something I personally want to learn more about, and Jennifer is excited to take me on that tour. Tomorrow and Thursday, all math teachers, grades 6, 7, and 8, and special education will be in the first training of our next steps forward with the math program heading into next year. And finally, I'm going to kick the last part over to our Deputy Superintendent, Ms. Hendricks, to just talk briefly about our principal recruitment efforts and procedures moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. So obviously, these are two very important positions for us to fill, the Pally principal and the gun principal openings. So the recruiting and hiring processes are a primary focus for the Human Resources Department now, and actually for the district as a whole. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. So members of the Executive Cabinet and also Certificated Personnel Director Lisa Hickey and I have been out at school sites conducting needs assessments with staff, parents, and students at both Gunn and Pally. The meetings have been really informative. We walked through a structured process of really looking at what are the knowledge, skills, and dispositions or core beliefs and values that you are hoping to find in the next educational leader. We compile the input that we're given. We've also put out an online survey that people can give us input to. So the meetings have begun. We will do some initial meetings, and we're gathering input by technology through survey and hoping to get a good response on that. So in terms of the timing, the positions are scheduled to be open until February 18th. We'll do an initial screening and then conduct first round interviews after that. We're looking at setting the panel interviews for Gunn and Pally, and those will be separate interview processes, probably sometime the first week of March. And we've really been having some exciting conversations about how do we look at an innovative process where we can increase participation and input and yet maintain a fidelity to the process and the confidentiality of the process for an important hiring decision. So we hope to get some more information out on that in the coming week or so.
Great, thank you.
Can I just, I want to make sure I understood what the superintendent said about the Stanford communication from the county. So the county has discussed with Stanford moving the location of a PAUSD designate, of the site designated for subsequent development of a school from one location to another location, but had not previously discussed that with the district, is that right?
No, not entirely.
Okay.
So let me give this a better shot.
Thanks.
It is my understanding that they have not had that discussion with Stanford yet. Stanford is aware that they want to have the discussion, and everything else I know about that conversation is third hand. So we have not been included as far as designating areas that we would like to see in that discussion. So I have really no item to bring before the board at this time. I received an email last week informing me that it was going to be at their meeting, which is today.
I don't know how my fellow board members feel about this, but I would certainly hope and expect that the county would be consulting with this agency before they start to negotiate essentially on our behalf. The last time this happened was during the GUP, and I think they lowballed us, or Supervisor Simitian and Chavez particularly lowballed us. So I didn't think that was a great precedent, and this worries me even more. So if the county is within the sound of my voice, I hope that they pick up the phone and consult before they take action on our behalf. Thanks for that.
Amen. Student board members, who wants to go first? Mr. Worden.
Thank you. Pretty straightforward today. We locked in February 25th as the date at tutorial for our anti-vaping fishball with Dr. Bonnie Halpin-Felsher of Stanford. We're still kind of working through the logistics on where we'll hold it, who will be in attendance, and how we'll get kind of the video out somehow to the rest of the student body, considering we don't believe we'll have all 2,200 students in attendance at once. Additionally, we held our second club day today at lunch. We have 15 new clubs this semester. That brings our total to 115 for the entire school year. We're hosting our Sco Globe, our music festival, student-run music festival at the end of the month. Super exciting, always really fun, just a couple days long. We've got our Pally Love Week this week that just includes balloons, this really fun kind of matching activity that's all about friendships, and essentially you answer a list of 10 really fun questions, and some algorithm, it kind of introduces you to new people that you get to go and meet. Super exciting. We're hosting our intramural basketball tournament in March, a couple weeks away, the 2nd through the 11th. It'll be at lunchtime. We've got our spring sports starting this week. And I forgot to mention this last meeting, and I apologize to Dr. Austin. The Pally and Gun football teams are scheduled to meet next season. And, I think as a community, we're looking into ways to make this, an inclusive and really fun community event. I'm sure I'll have much more information on that going forward, but it's unfortunate that I won't be a student at that time, but I'm considering coming home just to see it. So it's super exciting. Wish I had it while I was there, but.
Well,
We'd like to be a student a little longer.
don't
maybe
jinx
another-
yourself for second semester.
Got a few more months to go.
There you go. We've got our Tea with Teachers event March 4th, which is just a dialogue between students and teachers about a wide, variety of open-ended conversation regarding academics and social opportunities for both students and teachers within the district. We had 3 ASB members present to the 8th grade parent night at Pally the other day, just kind of introducing the students and the parents to how ASB functions and kind of getting them excited and introduced to, possibly running for an ASB office next year. And then finally, we held our Pally Challenge Day on February 3rd that included students from the Social Justice Pathway, the Black Scholars United Club, and the Gay Straight Alliance Club as well. So that's all from me.
Great, busy. Ms. Chang.
Yeah, all right, so I also have a couple things. The first thing was we had an electives fair and a spring club fair last Friday, last week, I'll say that. And again, I'm not sure the total, but I think it's around 115, 120 something clubs on campus. Right now, actually, it's happening at 8 o'clock, and it also happens tomorrow night, is the choir staff musical. Every year, students and teachers will collaborate on this show, and they raise money for essentially scholarships within the gun community, so it's a great cause as well. Similar to Pally, Gun also has Love Week this week, so it's basically, we have the Matchematics activity where you meet new people, supposedly. We also have a marriage ceremony tomorrow, so we have like a fake photo booth where you can get married to people, and they have like fake documents. It was someone's idea at some point, and we just rolled with it. Okay. The small learning community from Gun got back from their 1-week trip in Yosemite, and that was pretty fun. The Model United Nations Club at Gun is actually going to Washington, D.C. for a conference, and they're going, I believe, in a couple of days. The girls and boys soccer team from Gun are both undefeated. I was told that the boys have had some ties, but we're going to call it undefeated. No, they are undefeated in the league. And then their senior nights are coming up for cheer, wrestling, soccer, and basketball for girls and boys. And finally, this is just something that I'm a part of, and I think some students are a part of, is the WASC accreditation process. We're changing kind of the WASC goals, and so there's some students that are being involved. I will be attending for basically as long as I stop because I leave, but there are some juniors and sophomores that are going to be involved in the process. That is all for me.
Can I ask a quick question? I know they had art in unusual places at Pally. Is that still going on?
Correct, there's artwork up all across campus.
And does Gunn have something going on too?
We don't, but we were thinking this year from SEC that we're going to start hosting some kind of arts appreciation week. And this would kind of honor all arts. One day we would probably do ceramics, the other day would be like visual art, visual painting and drawing. The other day we might do something like music or choir. So that's something that we're talking about. And I didn't know that Pally did something like that. So we can probably get in touch and yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Next up is open forum. Anyone wishing to address the board on non-agendized items may do so at this time. Vicki, no cards? Okay, no one wishing to address. We'll move on to item 4, consent. These items are considered routine and will be approved in one action without discussion. If a member of the public would like to comment on a consent item, or if a board member would like to pull an item from consent, we'll consider it under action items. Are there any?
I move we
Oh,
approve.
I
Well,
would
you
like
can
to pull.
after I'm
You can move.
I'm just moving.
Yeah,
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
okay, is there a second?
Okay.
You?
And
All
I'd
right, any
like,
discussion?
oh, okay. I'd like to make a, what do I
You'd like
say,
to pull an
adjustment?
item,
I'd like to pull an item, so I'd like to make an adjustment to the motion.
okay?
I'd like to pull item M.
M as in Mary, which is the authorization related to Addison.
It's the authorization to issue the change orders at Addison Hoover.
Oh, Addison Hoover, okay,
El
sorry.
Carmelo.
Sorry, I just looked at the last sentence, at the
Yeah.
last word of the sentence there. Okay, so item N will get pulled. Any other changes? All right, so why don't you move it again,
Yeah, I move we, well, okay,
the consent calendar with the exception
the
of,
consent calendar with the exception of M.
Second.
okay. All right, any other discussion? No student board members?
Aye.
Aye.
Board members? Aye. Okay, unanimous, and we'll now move to action items, item M. Ms. Bean Caswell.
Yeah, I just, I wanted to ask if this would basically, I guess, is a change order if it's included in the budget that we have, or are we making an addition to the budget?
And here comes Bob.
Dr. Golton, our wounded warrior, is making his way to the podium. We got a problem with that mic? There we go.
I'm good. Yes, we're not asking for an augmentation of the budget. These 3 are included in the budget this time.
Thank you.
All right, so is there a motion on item M?
So moved, or I move. We approve
second.
M.
Okay, student board members?
Aye.
Aye.
Board members? Aye. Okay, unanimous on item M. All right, on to 5 action items. There are no action items for this evening's meeting. On to staff reports. Item A, equity snapshot. Dr. Austin.
I'm not as nice. I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Conway to walk us through the equity snapshot tonight.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Tonight's Equity Snapshot is a very brief update on PAUSD's continued efforts to address the demographic disparities that we are very much aware that we have in the district. And this report is framed around a particular quote that I hope will bring home the importance of asking 2 very essential questions in the district, and that is, how much are we really invested in equitable outcomes, and how far are we willing to go to get there? So Dr. Ron Edmonds writes that we can, whenever and wherever we choose, successfully teach all children whose schooling is of interest to us. We already know more than we need to in order to do this. Whether we do it must finally depend on how we feel about the fact that we haven't done it so far. So I believe our work thus far has demonstrated that we are committed to the work. The PAUSD Promise, the LCAP, the SIPSA, all of these things address equity in the proposed goals and objectives. And we've also just recently, thank you, Board, adopted an equity policy that outlines the district's commitment to making sure that we are addressing biases and making sure that we're building capacity in educators to serve our students. The adoption of the equity policy, I think, is a huge step in this district because it requires that we now have every educator focus on the things that need to happen in the classroom for us to really move the needle. And then our equity work obviously has to involve directly building the capacity of our educators to understand and recognize biases in the classroom. So part of that is making sure that our embedded equity training is also accompanied by very explicit training in how to recognize some of the issues around equity. And then just recently, you'll see a report in the board packet about a professional learning opportunity that was offered to teachers. It was a 10-week program, and over 37 educators participated in that program. We received quite a significant positive reaction to that, and some have even started their own studies in the particular topic. So we feel like that is an opportunity for teachers to engage in really courageous and deep conversations about those things that move beyond implicit bias. So I reward and thank the teachers for engaging in that discussion. And of course, our investment in equitable outcomes is testimony in our budget, in my position, as a matter of fact. Thank you, board. And also, I think that we will continue to see the impact on our budget in terms of some of the things that we're identifying as priorities in the district. So we hope to continue to see some commitment to the equity work as we move forward. And so all of these steps are testimony to how we feel about the fact that we haven't done it so far. So I thank the boards for their continued support in the work, and hopefully we'll continue to progress in the area of equity.
Great. Thank you. Any board member comments or questions? Ms. DiMaranza.
Thank you for this update, for this report. To see that 37 people came from across the district and really engaged in this work deeply, I think is both a testament to the staff that we have here and sort of sets the direction of where this can go and how we can grow it. Back in my old school district, we used to stress that if we didn't have enough professional development to support every teacher, and my mentor, the leader of our professional development, said, we don't have enough people power to do it all, so don't worry about it. Don't worry that not everyone's there. Don't worry, not every people have different priorities. Let's take the work that we're ready to do, and let's do it with the people that want to do it, and we'll grow it from there. And I think that's how you started this and what you did, and I think that's great. And I think that this complements so well. Dr. Austin, in your report, you mentioned the work of the Stanford education people who were talking about, hey, here are some predictors, right? If we know in 8th grade that you're here, this means there's going to be trouble. And so it looks like that's the kind of work we can do to then identify, okay, who needs explicit academic supports? And yet at the same time, that goes hand in hand with this, the culture, the practices, the leadership that we need to shift big picture in order to facilitate those grades going up and those kids feeling more apart, those kids wanting to come to school and attendance being less of an issue. So I see them as really complementing each other and working together. So I'm glad to see this going on, and I'm excited to see what comes next. Thank you.
I appreciate your mentioning the budget, Ms. Conway, because that's what I'm looking forward to as we, prepare the next budget. And I think we talked about this a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 meetings ago, was bring to the board the objectives that we've set, metrics around them, including those equity metrics, and expectations about what progress we can make with what investments. And so I think that's exactly right, that we want to make sure that our budget reflects those priorities, so that we can measure how well we are committed to the goal in practice, not just in terms of, rhetoric. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things that I'm really hoping to see us talk about in the future is what programs do we know about, programs and policies where we have some scientific research on the impact of those programs and policies in other districts. I believe Linda Darling Hammond is compiling work on that, and I look forward to learning more about that so that we can have a sense. We don't have to invent everything here. If something's working somewhere, I'd like to make sure we understand it and understand how we can actually implement it.
Thank you for the update. I've got nothing else to add.
Thank you.
Mr. Gordon?
Nothing for me. Always great to hear it.
I have nothing either. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's item, I should have kept my agenda in front of me.
6A.
6A, thank you. And then from the sublime to the whatever, we'll now go to 6B, coronavirus update.
That's my item for tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'll talk about communication, right? So absent some clear and timely, to the degree that we wished it would have been, direction from the county, we started pulling from other school districts and other counties that just seemed to be a little bit ahead, and went through and not only tried to find the most current information, especially through the public health departments, but to see what other people were putting in place as far as guidance for parents and for students and for staff members. It took us about an hour longer to get ours out than some of the surrounding school districts, but the hour was well spent. We spent time making sure that the information was not only accurate, but it was clear and culturally sensitive. And I think that extra step really paid off. And I got some really good feedback, but more importantly, we did not receive a lot of questions or concerns about the information, which tells us that with such a sensitive topic, so scary for so many people, that it was pretty nicely done and translated. And our community partners did a really nice job too of taking the information and posting it in other appropriate social media websites and venues, and I think that really helped us. As of today, we do not have a single student or staff member reported to us through the Santa Clara County Public Health Department for mandatory quarantine. That's good news. And we are certainly monitoring this daily. We're receiving updates pretty much daily from the county at this point. But our principals have done a really nice job sharing the message with their groups. Our PTA's been involved, and it's really just been a pretty good, solid effort. Really appreciate everyone's work in this. This was not handed to any one person. It's a team effort.
Great. Board member questions and comments?
I just had one question. Have we seen any effect on attendance or any sign that attendance is affected?
Yeah, I asked that exact question. Minimal. So right now, a question that we get is, well, how many people are voluntarily quarantined? We don't necessarily have all that information precisely right now. Some absences, we would just be guessing. But overall, I think everyone did a really nice job of calming things down and acting appropriately.
I want to thank you for reaching out to some of your superintendent colleagues to see how they were communicating. I think that can be incredibly helpful, and obviously it was in this instance. Ironically enough, our communication came out, and I also got a communication from my son's college, but ours came out first. So, thank you.
There we go. Students, anything? Oh, Sean, sorry, go ahead.
Is information continuing to flow from the county health department? Is there an open flow of communication, or are you having to go out and seek it?
No, they do a pretty nice job of pushing it to us, and then of course we're monitoring as well. And really in something like this, if there's a new development, there'll be no shortage of people informing us of what that development is. But the county's pretty good about it. I just think in this one particular piece where there was a shift to the federal guidelines for voluntary quarantine, that we really wanted to tie it and have a message that was in alignment to an anchor document.
Thanks.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I'll say is that this went very smoothly, but it didn't have to be that way. I mean, this is one that you could have tripped over. You could have gone on Saturday, and then new stuff came out on Sunday. And so, in the end, it's come out and smoothly, and I think the crisis has died down. But it is, just because there was no drama doesn't mean there wasn't a lot of work to get us to that point. So we appreciate that. All right, on to discussion items. And first up is item 7A, a resolution supporting Foothill De Anza Community College measures G and H. I'll take the lead on this one. So we've been asked to consider and pass a resolution supporting measures G and H, which are on the March 3rd ballot for partial tax and bond for Foothill De Anza Community College District. You can see the resolution here, which I think is self-explanatory. And maybe what's best is we do have a speaker here, Mr. Swenson, from former trustee of the Community College District. And why don't you tell us what you guys are doing?
Just a very brief thank you is what I'm here to present. Thank you for your individual endorsement for the 5 elected officials at large. It means a lot to us to have your support. You're a longtime Palo Alto residents and a great supporter of the public schools in our city. And we wish you the best of your efforts in May. So thanks so much for what you've done for Foothill Dance.
All right, great. So this is for discussion. Any questions, comments? Ms. Bacon-Caswell, you're up first.
Well, Mr. Swenson, thank you for your service for Foothill Dianza, and thank you for coming out tonight to talk to this. We are lucky to have a community college program that's so accessible for our community. And, you know, not just for older people in our community, not just for college-age people in our community, but our middle college program and the classes that our high school students can access there. And I think we take it for granted, but not every community has such a wonderful resource. So I will be supporting this resolution. I also personally endorsed.
Mr. Trump.
We talk a lot about lifelong learners and a lot about diverse pathways to support student success, and this is a critical piece of that. So in short, that's why I'm also supportive of this. Thank you.
Ditto. Yes, also, thank you for your service, and I was proud to individually support, and as Mr. Drop said, it really is such a treasure to have in our community, and it is such a great option for so many of our students, whether it's their planned pathway or the way they wind up there, which I think kids wind up there, students wind up there in lots of different ways. So thank you so much. I look forward to supporting this.
Mr. Dahmer.
Me too. I think the community college system is one of the great treasures of California, and I think Foothill Dianza really stands out in that system. So I'm really happy to support this, and you know, I'm confident that the community will support this as well.
Student board members, Ms. Chang.
Yeah, I personally know many of my friends that are through the middle college program or just gaining college credit by taking classes in community colleges. So it's a really good resource to have, especially for students that high school doesn't really, or traditional high school setting doesn't really work for them. So, I mean, I would thank you, essentially.
Mr. Gordon.
Yeah, similarly, I've seen a lot of people, you know, close to my heart go through the Foothill College or Dianza College programs. You know, it sounds wonderful. I see in the near future enrollment from PAUSD students going up in my mind. So it's a great option for a lot of students. So thank you once again.
Mr. Swenson, good luck. We're all rooting for you, and good luck on March 3rd. Okay, unless there's any other thought, we'll bring this back on consent and on February 25th.
Sounds good.
All right.
Given the time frame, maybe we should waive the 2-meeting rule and just adopt this resolution. I can't imagine that there's any particular benefit in not waiting, and maybe some benefit in acting tonight.
I'll share my thought on that, which is, having gone back and read the 2-meeting rule in conjunction with this item, I did not see either sufficient emergency or urgency, as I think it says in the word, or that this was sufficiently routine that it met the criteria of the 2-meeting rule. So,
Okay, well, let's test the question. I move that we waive the 2-meeting rule.
yeah, well, we can see. We can test the question. The argument is that the 2-meeting rule doesn't apply to this, or the exceptions don't apply. So we would be improper in overturning it. That's my argument. Not that I don't agree that not that I don't think it doesn't meet the criteria, but we can vote on it anyway.
Oh, I'll speak to that after.
Okay.
So I
my
second,
colleague.
just to get
Okay.
it, so we can discuss.
So why don't we just have a vote, because maybe we can move the discussion
Have a vote on what?
on the motion.
Was there just my second?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That was your second, right? Yeah. So any further discussion on that, or should we just?
Yeah, since we have an election coming up, I'd like to put us on the record sooner rather than later. And I hope that we're not even more bound by the 2-meeting rule than we already are. So I'll neglect your argument on that point.
Okay.
So I think that because the election is coming up, right? What's the date of the election?
March 3rd.
That's what I thought. So if we don't approve it till the end of February, I mean, the reason you go out for endorsements is so that you can go out there and say, look at all these groups and people that endorsed it. And so I am comfortable, I mean, I think we all individually endorsed it. And I'm comfortable waiving the 2-meeting rule because I think it is more useful for them if they can start using it earlier.
Why don't we just take
Yeah, I mean, I just want to read this out loud. The board may waive the 2-meeting requirement by a 2/3 vote of those present and voting if it is deemed important and necessary to act on a non-routine item in one meeting. And I'd say the important,
Yeah, it didn't strike me as necessary. So it meant important, but not necessary. It did say and, not or.
but it may
that's what
be
I read.
necessary to the campaign to have our endorsement.
Okay. Okay. I mean, to me, that's a real stretch of what necessity means, but why don't we just have a vote? Because it sounds like I'm going to lose, so we don't need to stretch it out. Student board members?
I'll abstain.
I want to abstain as well.
Okay, 2 abstentions. Board members, all in favor of the motion to waive the 2-meeting rule?
Aye.
Aye.
And I vote nay, so that's 4-1. We're waiving the 2-meeting rule. Does someone want to move the resolution?
I'll move that we approve this resolution.
Second.
Okay, I assume no discussion on that. Student board members on the resolution?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, board members?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimous in favor of the resolution.
Great.
Okay, on to congratulations. You got even more than what you expected. I did. Okay, on to item 7B, conceptual designs for JLS Middle School. Dr. Austin.
All right, having seen these earlier, pretty excited about it. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Gold.
Thank you. The board in the fall approved 2 architects, SVA and LPA, to proceed with the first Measure Z projects. SVA working on JLS, Fletcher, and Palo Verde. LPA working on Hayes, Escondido, and Green. The other 5 are on the way to you. We're working on them. But the fact remains, we're ready with JLS. And so tonight, I have Nathan Herrera with SVA that'll do a brief PowerPoint presentation. Tom will do a brief summary, and I have done my brief introduction. Thank you.
The key word I heard there was brief, so let's keep that in mind.
Yes, again, my name is Nathan Rao, and I heard the brief message, and I will go briefly. So I will just start out with, sorry, while I turn this on. Start off with the Measure Z master plan for JLS. Just to highlight, the items that were included in the budget for planning for Measure Z were 1, 2, and 3, which were the kitchen area, the multi-purpose cafetorium, and the new 2-story library wellness center. We have started the planning of this project, working closely with the site staff, the principal, the site council, and came up with a few sort of guiding principles for this. One, we are focusing on phase 1, which is the library, admin, and wellness areas. The other areas are tied up in the food service discussion for the district as a whole, and it's best to leave those to a second phase. And then 2, we've really taken a hard look at this and say, not only how do these pieces relate to each other, the library, admin, and wellness, but how do they help define sort of the campus as a whole, what the entry and identity of the campus is. We've had any number of meetings, so here's a kind of summary of our meetings with the staff. We actually were at site council yesterday evening as well, so one more that we didn't have on here. And with that, I'll get to the options. So option A, this is basically the plan that was in the master plan, which was to demolish the library building where it stands and build a new 2-story building there. So we pretty quickly moved on to looking at other options. This is expensive for what you get. You have to demolish an entire building to build a 2-story building back in its place, so it costs more than adding somewhere else. And it also fundamentally, on a campus that's primarily 1-story, it creates a pretty big disconnect with whatever program goes on the second floor. So there was concern, either way you orient this, that the first plan was that the library be on the second floor, that it would sort of become disconnected from the campus and the outdoor spaces that are around the library now. In option B, we are bringing the admin building into the planning. And the idea here was to actually place a new admin space where the existing relocatables are and the entry drive Waverly. This plan still left the library in the central location and then converted the existing admin into some admin support and the wellness center. Great reaction to where the admin was placed in this scheme, but you sort of disconnect the wellness center and the admin by having them spread apart in this plan. So you'll see where we're hinting where we're heading soon. The last option and the non-recommended was actually to put the library out in the location of those relocatables. This one felt like the library was a little sort of disconnected and maybe not the best choice to be sort of the first thing you see as you enter the campus. And leaving the admin sort of out in its area, which again is sort of feedback, not the best location for it. So that gives us option C, which is the option that was recommended and sort of approved by the site council. So in this option, we do a little hopscotch with the program elements. We put the new admin up front. We move the library from its current location into the existing administration building. It's now sort of up front. It has outdoor areas on both sides, so it can really take advantage of that central location. And then the admin and the wellness center that it goes back where the library was can become one big interconnected space and really have great adjacencies between those programs. Here you can see a kind of concept plan of some of those areas, with the idea being that we'd have a new sort of front door of attendance. That area backs up to the wellness center and some of the other administrative functions stretching out into the new building. But really the flow of this and how it brings those elements together, not having a disconnect between the buildings was really the key to recommending this scheme over the others. And then we've also been looking at the site as a whole and what we can do along with this phase 1 project in terms of parking and flow. So a few different items here. One is just parking count. Another is bike parking count. And then the sort of flow through the site. So taking those in order. You've lost some parking by additional bike parking sort of at the end of Waverly before you hit the gate that is taking up former parking, perpendicular parking spaces. You have a large area underneath the new solar panels that can be great for bike parking. It shades the bikes during the day if they're underneath there, and it has the ability to potentially free up some parking spaces where they're located now. We're looking at the parking that would be in front of the new admin, and one of the things that came out of Site Council is looking at changing that to diagonal, just to sort of encourage everyone to flow through the parking lot as intended rather than short-circuiting it and blocking traffic by pulling in and out at the front. And then looking at whether there's a need for a little extra parking there. And so all these are kind of in-process items that we'll continue to study throughout schematic design. And with that, I'll hand it over to Tom.
Great, thank you, Nathan. So last two slides are budget and schedule. Here's our initial construction budget worksheet we put together. You can see it's very high level at this point because we're still working with block diagrams. But this construction budget translates to a project budget of about $14,766,000 and change. And that difference is made up by the change order contingency, architect fees, construction management fees, inspection, all those other soft costs, including furniture and interim housing. So here's a tentative schedule of what we plan to do moving forward. We did have a lot of meetings today about safe routes to schools. We did talk about this JLS plan quite a bit. And so when we come back to schematic design, you'll see the results of the feedback that we got from them. They really loved the idea of putting the bike parking under the solar panels. Thought that was a great use of the space. The next two items, obviously conceptual design, if that happens at the 25th, and then schematic design. This is Nathan's deadline for May to get it to us, and we're hoping for approval by June. So if you look at the write-up says June. That's because that's my deadline. And same with the DSA submittal. I think he has, I have February in the write-up. And then authorization to bid, if all goes well, would be August of next year, and then hopefully awarding it out in December 2021. So with that, we are ready for your questions.
Great. Per our updated process, this project has been reviewed and discussed by the property committee, so why don't we let the property committee speak to it first?
Thank you. Yes, the property committee reviewed this. A lot of staff work went into this, and on the committee, we gave some guidance. I don't have much to say on this, except to say that the options that you were presented with today, we discussed a lot about how those options would be presented. Going forward, we decided that there would be another additional review by the property committee in line with whatever is created in the BBAC in terms of ed specs, or approved by the board, or policies, to make sure that options that are recommended by site council through that process are once again reviewed by the property committee to make sure they align with existing standards. So just making sure that we're doing good committee work to bring the board a fully aligned product.
Good committee work, music to my ears. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I didn't. Thank you for your work on this.
Okay, any other comments and questions?
Just along the lines of what Mr. Durop said, not on this particular project, but on the food service piece where, we do have some work to do. What is the schedule for that? When would we expect to see that work and then how that reflected in the next phase of this project?
Phase 2 work.
Yeah.
Okay, so the BBAC committee is really, we're hoping that they get through their work this spring and give some guidance on how that central kitchen and food service program district-wide will work. And so that was a big reason why it was very easy for us to say, let's move up the admin library project, let that sort itself out, and then that would be a phase 2 project that would follow the phase 1. So if all goes well, we could start design on that probably in 2 years from now.
Okay.
To match up to where that would be ready for starting construction when this project finishes.
Okay, so we'll see the BBAC output probably spring, fall timeframe, which will be well in time for this piece, at least for this project. Okay, thanks.
Ms. Bean-Caswell, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I used to be a parent at JLS, so I'm very, very familiar with the layout here. And so I was thinking as I read through it, like, what are sort of the pros and cons here? Having the admin and wellness areas together is pretty important. So I think that was a very good choice. Looks like a good flow. I was not completely clear on what our net parking space situation is when all said and done with this recommendation. Can you tell me that?
So we haven't worked out the details of parking counts yet. One, we did want to have the meeting with the TSRs today to get their feedback. Obviously, they were really focused on bike parking, so there will be a big increase in bike parking. But our goal is to keep the same number of parking spaces, and if we can get more spaces, we will. But with that with the office in the front of the school essentially being now on Waverly, we probably will lose some parking spaces there for like some short-term drop-off visitor parking. And then we're also looking at the possibility of doing diagonal parking instead of perpendicular parking. So that would probably, we'd lose a few spaces there as well. So when we come back for schematic design, I can tell you actual parking counts.
So as an active parent there, if there's a way not to lose spaces, I would encourage it because, it's sort of dangerous when parents pull in there and they're just waiting for their kids. And, what happens now is they line up along that overhang that goes in towards the gym. So that overhang between the admin building and the gym, people just line up there. And so if there were some more spaces, that might improve that situation. Are there any restrooms going into these new buildings?
I think we've got, there obviously will be the new restrooms with like the nurses area and probably some staff restrooms in the administrative space. But again, we'll have more detailed plans when we come back next time, and we can show you where they would be. But yeah, most of the staff, it'd be mostly staff restrooms and unisex toilet spaces.
And
Not-
unisex, okay, because
not
I would
any
think in the
gang,
wellness area, there might be some.
Yes.
Okay, but you'll bring back and let us know. The other thing I just want to share is that little garden behind the admin building. You may think, oh, it's just cute, whatever. It's actually really treasured by the community. And I like the idea of having the library on one side of it like it is today. Well, it'll be on the other side, but I like the idea that you're not getting rid of it. I think that the community will be happy about that.
Yeah, we've heard that a few times.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, Mr. Gordon, anything on?
Yeah, a very quick comment. I heard the comment about keeping the sun off the bicycles. I think more importantly, and what a lot of teachers and classified staff members who drive to school don't realize is unexpected rain ruins kids' days. When they have their bikes on campus and not expecting rain and midday rain, kids are calling parents. Parents are coming out of work. All this kind of stuff. It's unfortunate. So more important than keeping the sun off the bikes, I think that the solar panels could keep the rain off the bikes, not only at JLS, but at other schools if they chose to do that as well. That's all. Thank you.
Ms. Chang?
I don't really have anything to add, but thank you for your work.
Okay, if that's, any more comments? I'm sorry to hear about the resilience of our middle school students in the rain, but hopefully we'll deal. Great, if there are no objections, we'll bring this back on consent. Great. Okay. Moving on to item 7C, 2020 CSBA Delegate Assembly Election. Ms. Bacon-Caswell, do you want to help us out on this?
So I've been your delegate, I've been CSBA's Santa Clara County delegate last year. I think I brought forward information about our challenges in special ed, which was our topic this past delegate assembly meeting, and discussions about the need for some legislation that would bring more revenue to schools. So I think I've represented you. So I hope that you think that I should continue to be a delegate. When I look at the list here, I would say that the delegates, Cynthia Chang, Jody Muirhead, and Mary Patterson have been at delegate assembly meetings with me. I believe that each of these folks have represented our county really well, and I would recommend that we vote for them to continue. They provided diversity across the county, South and Unified and elementary. I think we have a good mix right now.
Okay, any comments, Mr. Brianza?
I move that we move forward the four that Ms.
This
Bacon-Caswell.
is actually just for discussion, it'll be for action next time.
Oh, that's right, we're in discussion. No, that I don't know any of them well enough to say anything different.
Okay.
So I appreciate Ms. Bacon-Caswell's service over the past year and hope she will continue. We'll get a chance to continue.
Mr. Dauber?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate Ms. Baton-Caswell's service. It definitely benefits the district to have a representative from our board, and I look forward to you winning again.
Likewise, thank you, Ms. Bain-Caswell.
Ms. Chang?
Thank you.
Very well. Thank you.
I do have one comment. While the group is diverse in some respect, it is not in another. 3 of the 4 are basic aid districts, and if you look at the total delegation from the county, it's actually 6 of the 11 are basic aid districts. And to me, that seems like an overrepresentation of basic aid districts when you look at our composition of our county, both by districts and by students. And for that reason, I'd probably lean toward voting for Ms. Chavez from Eastside Union, which I think is a district that would be it'd be good to be represented. It's a big district that has a bunch of challenges that are representative challenges both in our county and in our state. So I throw that out for consideration, but I would, when we come around to vote, I think I will propose that we choose somebody who is not, we even the mix a little bit more and have substitute for one of the basic aid district representatives, a non-basic aid district representative.
And do you have an idea of how you decide who you wouldn't bring in, or no?
I looked at the backgrounds. I mean, so I think Ms. Bacon-Caswell probably knows the candidates better. I did look at the backgrounds of the various candidates, and I didn't have strong feelings. The other 2 basic aid districts are Los Gatos, Saratoga, and Santa Clara.
Right.
I've met Ms. Chang, I've never met Ms. Muirhead. So I don't know if you have any views on that, but it would be Ms. Chavez for one of those two would be my view.
So I will say that the basic aid districts, when you go to delegate assembly, are not represented I mean, we may have a bunch of representatives, but the other counties don't. So, and often there's weird stuff that the non-basic aid districts would not even talk about if we don't bring it forward. So I'm just going to share that other side. Nobody on this list would be a bad candidate, but I do think that Jody Muirhead has provided some good feedback and conversation. She's been a good representative, I think, for the whole district. And so has Cynthia Chang, and she's got, I hear what you're saying. I feel like we're underrepresented a lot when we're in conversations with LCFF districts.
Well, there are a lot more of them than us.
Well, of course there are.
Maybe we're appropriately represented. Okay, any other, this is not for action, so we'll have a chance. And I, refresh my memory, I think we just do a motion on a slate and then keep voting. Yeah, but we just keep voting until we agree on a slate, right? There's no voting procedure on this.
No.
Okay. Okay, so this will come back next time for action on the 25th. And I think it's due March 16th or something. So we have time. Okay. That is item 7C. That is the last discussion item. All that's left is information items, and the only information item is the board calendar. I do have something to speak on this. I don't know if anybody else has anything to speak on board calendar.
You mean like just our regular go-around updates?
No, this is, well, the board calendar is on there as an information
not board
item.
operations. No,
So
I
I
don't
figure
have
I
anything
can,
for,
I
okay,
figure
go
I'd get
ahead.
it there. Okay, so I'll just go ahead. We've done a good job, as we can see by the clock, of compacting some of the business and procedural aspects of our business, and in some sense, that's a reward by itself. We get to go home early, but our job is to do a great job for students. And I think of the compacting as making room for a more thoughtful discussion of initiatives that actually improve student achievement and well-being. And so I went through the agenda and kind of compared it to the promise and some of the things that we'd had underway. And there are some things I'd like to propose that we add to the spring kind of as initiative reviews. And the ones that I saw were special education. We have a special education plan on record from, I believe now, going on 3 years ago. And we've kind of lost the thread. I don't think we've had an update on that. We had a significant reorganization of the special education department. So I think it would be very useful to kind of understand where we are on the plan, where we stand on the plan that we had, and what we plan to do going forward. A second is SEL programs. This was a very big focus. We adopted an SEL curriculum framework district-wide, and we've adopted programs both at the high school and at the elementary and secondary and middle school level. But I don't think there's been an update, at least that I can recall, on the state of SEL programs and how this curriculum framework rollout has gone. I think that would be a very useful update. It would also be nice to get another update on, I don't know what we call it, but I think of the SAFE update that we had probably, was that in December maybe? Which I think was a very big initiative that we're undertaking this year, and it would be great to have a second look, maybe toward the end of the year, to hear how that's gone and what we've achieved and haven't achieved. And then finally, I think it's been very nice having the principals of Barron Park and Escondido come in and talk about what they've been doing and and how things are going, and that's sort of ground zero for some of the work. Those are the earliest schools that we've focused in. So I'd love to have those principals come back and talk more about what they've done. And then the last thing is the state released CAS scores for science. In addition to ELA and math, there are now science CAS scores. And ours were okay. I mean, it was the first time out. It's hard to calibrate. It's hard to tell what they really mean, but it would be great to have a report on that, just like we have on the ELA and math CAS. So I don't know if other people have other things that they'd like to see included, but those are kind of thoughtful updates from staff that I'd like to see sometime between now and the end of the school year. Any thoughts on those or other things?
I don't have any problem with those. I had two other things that I'd like to suggest. One is that our county assessor, Larry Stone, has asked if he could come and give us an information report, and I think we should take him up on it. And then the other thing is, you and I spoke about whether the CalSSD priorities were something that we wanted to have more than just me give a review during board operations. And since they represent us in Sacramento, I think it makes sense for you to be aware of how they're representing us. The good news is that the set of priorities that they put out for the year actually move during the year based on input from different member organizations. So I would suggest they will update the current list for the May 8th meeting. And if we can get an early version of that, we can review that. Otherwise, we should wait till after the May 8th meeting, because the list that I was given, that I got at the last CalSSD presentation that I was at, was really based on last year. And so for us to comment on last year's priorities, I don't know if that's that helpful.
Okay, good point. Any other things that we should add? Students, anything that we should add? All right, good. Yeah, go ahead.
I would just say that on the mental health services discussion on May the 12th, I think it would be useful for that to include a discussion of student wellness generally, and also where we are in terms of suicide prevention. We've adopted board policy. We spent a lot of time a year or two ago in BPRC on suicide prevention, and it would be helpful to hear where we are just in terms of trainings and so forth.
I actually had a question. I don't know if it's.
Ms. Chang?
I was just wondering, because a couple of meetings ago we talked about it was about the homework policy and the amendments to the board policy. I was wondering if that's something that's going to be brought up in the agenda in the future, or. Okay.
There's a couple of homework reports I noticed on the 17th of March, and also another one on the May meeting. The May the 12th. Is that?
So I think the answer to your question is yes. Yes.
I'm suddenly realizing that we haven't had a fully inclusive counseling report for a while, and that was something that we had given direction on. So maybe at the end of the year, it would make sense to have an update.
So can you just add two sentences?
Yeah, I mean, I can go back a lot of, no, I can remember. If I went back a couple of years, there was some concern that we had different counseling models at the two high schools. And the direction that was given by the board was what we really wanted was, we wanted students to have similar outcomes. And how they got there, we were less concerned about. And so I don't think we've been updated in a while on that.
Yeah, I would second that. I kind of mentally categorized that under the SEL umbrella, but I think that Ms. Baden-Caswell is right. That really is a standalone issue, and that's been one of great significance. It would be good to hear about it.
Great. So it sounds like this will be the last short meeting of the year.
Yes.
Okay. If there's nothing else on item 8A, we'll move on to board operations. Ms. DiBrienta.
Okay, I've got a couple things here. Yesterday, I went to a Stop the Bleed training, which was offered to district employees, and there were probably 50 people in the room getting training. And it was Stop the Bleed, how if someone is bleeding profusely, you call 911, but what do you do to make sure that you keep them alive and until, right, and not bleeding too much. But it was great. There was some nurses from Stanford were here and giving a talk, and there were demonstrations. There was a chance for staff to do demonstrations, and each site is going to be getting a Stop the Bleed kit, which has tourniquets and just the proper supplies for when something might happen. So that was great, and I'm glad we're providing that to our staff. Last week was our first BBAC meeting. There's no summary here because it was really sort of our organizational first meeting, and we didn't get through a lot of content, but it was good. We've got a nice cross-section of people, community members and staff members and board members, and we discussed how we really wanted the work to go. hoping to get really a lot of the ed specs done before the end of the year, as was mentioned earlier. And we'll see how that goes. It was interesting, people came to the meeting with their own ideas of what was really important to also make sure, which I guess is the point of having a be back type of thing. But our CSEA rep mentioned that there were some places in Pali that were not necessarily accessible for all of our students. And we said, oh, well, in the old buildings, and no, the new construction. We thought, oh, okay, we should take a look at that. So one of the things we asked members to do was to go back to the sites with which they're affiliated and just find out if you were to talk to architects who are looking at, or the builders, what sorts of things would you want to make sure just in every new building we make? And that was sort of a surprise that isn't already there, the accessibility stuff for every single building. But I think what the law requires and what is the reality for some of our students with different needs might be a little bit different. So that's one of the things they're going to bring back next time. And yet someone else wanted to talk about bathrooms. Someone else really wanted to talk about air conditioning. So people brought their own agenda to it. So we're going to try to prioritize those. And the homework that the members had was to start by looking at just the elementary ed specs. The ed specs is 150 pages. Just look at the elementary ed specs, look them over, and see if anything jumps out at you as something you want to learn more about, you have questions, or you have suggestions or concerns about. And so in the next meeting, we'll really focus on elementary ed specs. And as was pointed out to us, there's a lot of overlap between the elementary, middle, and high. And they might look different, right? What we decide is we want an ed specs for elementary. Bathrooms might not be the same thing in high school bathrooms, but a lot of them do look the same. So we thought, starting with elementary, if we worked our way through that, a lot of the middle and high schools, there'd be redundancy for, and we'd more quickly get through the others. So we're meeting again in a month, and we'll look over the elementary ed specs. Everyone will come back with what they sort of found out about accessibility issues to see if there's anything there that we want to fold into ed specs, or if there's sort of one-offs that just need to go to management. And that's be back. The property committee is meeting next Tuesday night. City School Liaisons meeting next Thursday morning. And just so everyone knows, on March 20th, a Friday night, is the Rise Together fundraiser, the Pali scholarship event. And I know that the Gun Foundation has their own, and I think it already happened this year. I can't remember when that was, right? That happened already? Yeah, they had it already. So that one's coming up March 20th. That's all.
Excellent. Mr. Dover.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Ms. Bain Caswell.
Well, we had our first finance committee meeting. The Ms. Chow ran yesterday.
Wow.
And we had some members of our community. I was really impressed. There's somebody with a kindergartner and a preschooler who was there, a dad. And he said, my wife does a lot of volunteering, and I was told I needed to do something. And I was like, great. Nothing like getting some new young parents in.
That's how I got here, so.
And there you have it. So, I don't want to, scare them too much. You could end up on the school board if you come to too many of these finance committee meetings. I think Ms. Chow did a very good job of providing an overview, not just as how we put our finances together, but some of our unique challenges for our district and the differences between basic aid districts and non-basic aid districts. And I think it was helpful for everyone to be there. I hope that, I think everybody that was there was excited to be an ambassador for how we do our finances, which I think will be good for us because we're going to get questions before they come to the board. And that, I think, will be very helpful for what kind of presentations are being brought together. Yesterday, I was invited down to Fremont Union High School District to see their Bridges program, which is the program where they have special ed students that are not on a graduation path, so they are responsible for them until they're 21. They're doing some really interesting stuff. They have 3 businesses going. Dog biscuit business, I know we have one at Gun, but theirs is on steroids, can you say? They have different flavors of dog biscuits. They sell them through different local stores. The students were very excited to tell me about all the decorating of the packages that they did. And I mean, it was really amazing. They make candles. like scented candles, and they also make greeting cards that were quite beautiful. They don't make a lot of them, but they make some. Oh, and they also sell succulent plants. So they had a lot of things going, and they also, which was very interesting, have an apartment that's used to teach these students how to do some daily lives things. So how to make beds, how to vacuum your floor, how to cook a meal. And that's what the apartment's used for. It's used as a classroom. It was great to see. I said, do you have room for students from other districts that might not have these programs? And they said, no, they're usually full.
Nice try.
I know, I know. March 7th is the Santa Clara County School Boards Association's legislative brunch. It is from 8:30 to noon. It is worth your time to go because all of our local legislators are going to be there. And John Festerwald, who I think you all know, will be the facilitator of the conversation. Not many activities where you can have pretty much all of the local legislators in our area in one place. So I encourage you to go, and they serve breakfast, so you can, from 8:30 to noon. And I think Vicki will let you know how to get a ticket if you want
Already
to
has.
go. Already has. Okay, so I encourage you guys to take a look at it. SF Squared has a March meeting. That's our organization that lobbies for us, for basic aid districts that we're part of. They do it once a year. It's usually jam-packed. And Ms. Chow, do you know the date? March 5th. It's in Sacramento, which is certainly a pain, but it's only once a year, and it's certainly worth going. Some districts' entire boards come, some of our peer districts. And in March, there's also a day where the Santa Clara County School Boards Association will join with CSBA up in Sacramento and go in for advocacy into different legislators' office, and they'll go in groups. And I'm planning to go up if anybody wants to join me, make the drive to Sacramento less painful. Okay, well, think about that.
Great. Mr. Trout?
I've got nothing.
All right, I have nothing as well, and so at 7.
Can I just make a comment? I want to appreciate the work of my fellow board members in doing the committee work that I'm hearing about. I think it's a great innovation for the board to have a functioning committee system. I think those of you who advocated for that, I think Mr. Collins, you were one of those, and I think the work that is going on sounds really impactful to me. So thank you.
Yes, I think we are growing our practice as a board, based on the model that the BPRC presents to us. So, all right, there being no other business at 7:45, we're adjourned.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, when do you want? I have it on my calendar at 4:30. We can do it.